Welcome back to Metalocalypse Fanfiction Theater. Today's episode is going to work a little differently. I have not read the fic we are going to be reading today. It will be, in effect, a dramatic reading / react video. If you have not guessed, today's fic is going to be the infamous Dethmelons. I somehow had not come across and read this fanfic. It was mentioned to me in a Discord group by some of my friends, and I knew that by their horrified and excited reactions when I told them I had not read it, that there was only one course. Let's get started, shall we? Going quickly through the boilerplate here, it is rated explicit. No archive warnings apply. Love to see that. It is an Gen fic for the Metalocalypse fandom, as I would assume. The relationships are Deathclock / Fruits, as well as Charles Nubler vibes. Nubdinson's a rare pair. Love to see that. Members of Deathclock, plus Charles Foster Obdinson and Dick Magic Ears Nubler, and the Clocketeers are tagged as characters. And for the additional tags, we have crack, sexual content, fruit, sex toys, humor, male homosociality, and male bonding. I'll be honest, I feel like I already know where this is going, but let's read on. Dethmelons by Merci. Summary. Charles's curiosity gets him into trouble when he follows a trail of watermelon seeds to the scene of a horrific, pornographic crime in progress. Notes. For Harmond. Disclaimer. I am making no profit from this fanfiction. I do not own Charles, Nubler, Nathan, Pickles, Squiscar, Toki, Murderface, the Nameless Clocketeers, or anything relating to the awesome series Deathclock. Is this an older fanfiction? Noting that you don't own the characters is something that's fallen out of vogue with fanfiction. This is vintage. It's almost a decade old. I wrote this with for a friend for Christmas. She always inspires me to write crack, and so I tried to think of one of the crackiest things I could. This is the result. Need I mention, I actually saw this on a porno once. A visit to pornotube.com's gay section and a quick search for watermelon will yield you the video DK is watching in this very fic. Like magic. NSFW, of course. Spank Bank. Collection of mental images that are drawn upon when engaging in self-love. Lol, can you feel the Charles / Nubler vibes I'm channeling here? I can't help it, they just seem like the type to get along, even though Nubler is more in DK's level than Charles is. He's still assertive, and Charles really needs someone who can take care of himself. Alright, it's not the worst ship summary I've ever heard. Alright, so now that we've read the bit of the tagging system and the author notes here, let's get into the work proper. Dethmelons. Charles didn't know what to think when he saw the watermelons scattered about the kitchen. He should have known better. He should have just walked away. But it was his managerial duty to prevent the end of the world, and he didn't put it past Deathclock to bring about the apocalypse with fruit. He also couldn't explain the bizarre holes that were carved into the round fruits, one each. And, his curiosity piqued, he wandered in search of Nathan and an explanation. On his way, he bumped into Dick Nubler, who appeared very agitated. Nubler, what's going on? I didn't think the boys were recording anything today. Did, Murderface call you to work on Planet Piss? He took in Nubler's appearance, noting the disheveled hair and strange red look in his electric eyes. He'd never seen the normally controlled producer so jumpy. A thought occurred to him, and his curiosity for the watermelons turned to concern. Nubler pulled at his collar, adjusting the tailored Nehru jacket, and shifted uncomfortably. Charles, how are you? Charles didn't have time for pleasantries. Do you know anything about the watermelons in the... Watermelons? Nubler said, his voice trembling as he seemed to crumble. He dramatically clutched at Charles' lapels. They're just... I told them it was... I'm not that kind of producer. He looked at Charles with what would have been teary eyes if he had any tear ducts. I just came here to record Planet Piss, not that. What? Charles said with mounting anxiety. Something about the watermelons, then. Charles's curiosity mounted, though seeing the producer so upset over whatever it was left him feeling apprehensive about investigating alone. He looked at Nubbler, raising an eyebrow and hoping for more of an explanation. Nubbler shook his head as if he didn't want to breathe a word of what he'd seen, and instead tilted his head in the direction of the common room. He absently smoothed out his suit jacket as he began to retreat away from Charles. Good luck, Often Sin. Don't leave just yet. Charles touched Nubbler's shoulder and pulled the smaller man back. I may need you to, help me. He didn't know what the producer had seen, and he wouldn't let him leave if it was something bad. Nubbler's feet scraped to a halt and his shoulders tensed. That's not my job, Charles. Why not get the Clocketeers to help you? He struggled to pull away, but something had weakened him. It was as if he was haunted by waking nightmares of what he'd witnessed. Charles tightened his grip and pulled Nubbler close. He wasn't the comforting type, but he decided a soft touch would work better. He relaxed his fingers and gently rubbed the producer's shoulder, hoping to calm him down. Nubbler, I don't know what's going on, but I need your help. Please. He adjusted his glasses, feeling his own tension mount as he watched Nubbler, the man who had seen Deathclock at their worst, acting skittish. I'd rather get as few people involved in this. That and... He took a deep breath. I trust you not to get drawn into the boy's misadventures. He didn't add that the Clocketeers were so expendable that bringing a contingent of them with him was just as good as Captain Kirk bringing an escort of red shirts into hostile territory. At the very least, he could trust Nubbler to not get killed in whatever was going on. Charles brushed aside the thought that he wanted Nubbler there because he didn't want to be alone. No. Charles was a big boy and wasn't afraid of anything. He looked imploringly into Nubbler's electric eyes, unable to read him through the changing colors, willing him to act as support in what was to come. After cleaning up all their other messes, Charles wondered if anything they did could surprise him. He shouldn't have wondered. He should have known better. He should have walked away the moment he'd stepped in the watermelon juice in the kitchen. A trail of sticky footprints would have been better than what was to come. Charles's feet ground to a halt just inside the doorway to the common room, short of kicking over a large pile of watermelons. Nubbler rubbed at his nose, sniffing furiously and seeming somewhat subdued as whatever drugs he'd snorted entered his bloodstream. He still covered his eyes as he walked, bumping into Charles just inside the common room. Watermelons. Everywhere. Charles looked about, surprised for the first time in a long time as he noted the various piles. Some had tolls, some were untouched, and some were in use. Blinking a few times to make sure he was seeing what he thought he saw, Charles surveyed the horror that had touched Nubbler so profoundly. It was so fucked up, he wasn't certain he would sleep properly either. Every member of Deathclock was present. None of them wore pants, and all of them clutched a watermelon that they furiously thrust onto their erect penises. That's exactly what I thought it would be. Pickles sat on the couch, his freckled thighs spread wide as he thrust the watermelon onto his rosy penis. His dreadlocks twitching with every movement, and his cheeks were flushed rosy pink, his brows knit together in concentration. Nathan sat on the opposite side of the couch in a similar position, though he'd carved a handhold into the fruit so he could manipulate it with one hand, while he played with his balls with the other. His head rested on the back of the couch, and his black hair spilled out over the black leather, his black eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Squiscar had set his watermelon on the floor and was fucking it missionary style, while Murderface was set up beside him, watching the guitar god and trying to ask him for tips as they fucked. He tried to match the Swede's thrusting, just as fast as his guitar playing, but his stomach got in the way and the watermelon kept rolling out from underneath him. Fuck it, stupid watermelon! I'm still on number 1! Done! Nathan shouted as he spent himself into the fruit and tossed it into his used pile. "Someone get me another one and a Viagra! I'm going to win!" A clocketeer rushed to his side with one of the male enhancement pills and a fresh watermelon. He began to cut the hole into the fruit, following Nathan's instructions to make the hole tighter this time. Another clocketeer hovered around them all with a video camera, zooming in on the new watermelon descending onto the front man's thick cock. Charles's eyes darted about, from watching Nathan, to Pickles, and then Murderface. Now he understood, but he still didn't understand what the hell he was seeing. A mule of release came from the computer desk where Toki sat with his own melon and a few hollowed-out squash. He tossed his melon to the side. "Gives to me another watermelon!" he panted, massaging his dick in satisfaction. "Hey, I got some ideas! Microwaves it!" "Yeah! That's an awesome idea! Do mine too!" Nathan ripped the fruit from his dick and threw it at a nearby clocketeer. Squiscar and Pickles did the same, but Murderface grunted in frustration and ignored them. "Guy, stupid!" He rolled into a sitting position and continued to jam the fruit onto his dick. "They don't say anything about microwaving it in the video. How do we know?" "Duns!" Toki interrupted him, coming again in record time and throwing his backup squash into his done pile. "Oh, Squiscar, is that all you's done? Boy, you gonna lose when we counts all mines." "Boys," Charles decided to interrupt them during their pre-microwaved watermelon break. "What are you doing?" He turned to the cameraman. "Stop recording. Erase the file." "No, don't!" Nathan barked, halting the poor traumatized clocketeer. "We need that for the porno." "Wait, porno?" Charles adjusted his glasses and looked sideways at Nubbler for an explanation. "Hey, they were like this when I got here," the skinny producer said, holding his hands up defensively. "They wanted me to direct them." "Yeah, you're a producer, so you should be able to produce this!" Nathan interrupted before taking the freshly microwaved watermelon from the clocketeer and jamming it on his horn. "No, I do sound, Nathan, and a producer doesn't direct." Nubbler growled at the front man while trying to avoid looking at him. "I didn't expect to see this when I woke up this morning." "Strangely enough, neither did I," Charles interjected. "I'll have to, reassess all my contingency plans and broaden the sorts of disasters you boys could get into." "What disaster?" Pickles asked through clenched teeth as he spilled his load into the heated melon on his dick. "Oh, fuck. Dudes, we're gonna be so rich after this." "But we's already rich," Toki said as he spread his thighs. "I just don't want to lose." "Ja, mes neither," Squiscar huffed as he arched back, his body glistening with sweat and watermelon juice. A few seeds clung to his petite buttocks, and he bit his lip as the camera zoomed in, capturing the near bliss on his features while he struggled to climax into the fruit. "Guys, this is ridiculous. I don't understand what it is you're trying to do, but, please stop?" Charles felt his strength falter as he watched his boys fuck like they'd never fucked before. And he'd seen them fuck in wild orgies. At least at the orgies, they'd given themselves more rest time between orgasms. What they were doing looked too painful to be erotic. He looked to Nubbler, but the producer was more weakened from the spine decalcifying sight. He followed Nubbler's gaze to Murderface's gesticulating buttocks, all hairy and pitted, rashed and dark along the crack. It was like a runway for a penis. Charles couldn't look away, even though he knew that the boner-killing image would haunt his spank bank forever if he didn't close his eyes. Wait. Too late. Charles threw up a little in his mouth. Charles throwing up a little in his mouth seems to be a theme of the fics I feature on this show. "Don't get sucked into it!" Nubbler covered Charles's eyes and wrenched him to the side. "Can we go now? I don't get paid enough for this." Charles had to agree there, but he paused before leaving as something on Toki's computer screen caught his eye. As he drew closer, he saw a video of a man fucking a watermelon. The image on the screen zoomed in on the actor's ripped body as it thrust and fucked in the sterile white room. He was on the floor beside a single couch, a watermelon propped beneath him, and a circular plug resting a few feet away. It was the strangest thing Charles had seen, though he couldn't get closer to see more than that. The Norwegian was fucking a squash with such reverent ferocity that Charles was afraid to interrupt him. He thought furiously for a way to ask the question, but no tactful, classy way came to mind. You boys are, fucking a watermelon to be like the guy in the movie. The man on the screen was staring out into thin air as his body moved, mechanically lifting the melon up and down on his penis. He almost looked like he couldn't believe what he was doing it. Like he'd lost a bet, and still hadn't realized that the moist, juicy cavern that engulfed his wang was really a cold pink watermelon. Charles shuddered.
Yeah, we's do a sequels to that movies,
Toki panted, nearing his umpteenth orgasm as he looked so earnestly into Charles's eyes.
Who's can fucks the most?
My lords, we have depleted the house's watermelon reserves, a clocketeer announced as he carried in one last watermelon. I'm afraid there are no more watermelons.
In the world?
Nathan growled as hot spurts of cum leaked out of the hole in his watermelon, and he rolled his hips into the moist cavern. Yes, Nathan, the world. Charles seized his opportunity to end the horror. You boys had better decide who gets the last...
Me!
Nathan panted, downing a few Viagra and making grabby hands at the clocketeer.
No, Nathan, you're not ready yet. Let me.
Pickles lunged for the fruit, but tripped over his pants.
Fucking, this is why we shouldn't wear pants, dudes. We can't move with them.
Charles nudged his glasses down and massaged the bridge of his nose. It was stupid. Nothing that would cost them money, but stupid. He wondered if he could focus on anything else for the rest of the day. It was as if his mind had been damaged by what he'd seen.
Me!
Murderface screamed as he hobbled towards... Oh my god.
Me!
Murderface screamed as he hobbled towards the clocketeer.
I need it more than anyone else!
His calloused penis flopped about underneath his belly, and he kicked his pants off as he tried to beat everyone else to the bewildered clocketeer. Take it, my lord. The traumatized employee threw the fruit at Murderface and backed away like a terrified animal. He cast a remorseful glance to the cameraman before turning around and running like a bitch. In one graceful movement, Murderface caught the watermelon in one hand, tore a hole in it with his teeth.
With his teeth?
Tore a hole in it with his teeth and jammed it onto his horn.
I'm not gonna lose to you assholes. But Moidaface, he was already has.
Toki rushed over to him, his dick flopping about as he did.
Yes, you lose, and now yous eat the watermelons, loser.
Squiskar rose to his feet and put his hands on his naked hips as he watched the bass player fuck like a broken machine. The rest of the band finished their fruit and then counted their piles. Charles didn't need an abacus to confirm that Murderface had, indeed, lost and would... Wait, what does the loser do? He looked at Nubbler for clarification. Maybe his magic ears had picked out a less revolting punishment. The slight producer only looked at him morosely. It was a look that said he might sue for emotional anguish if he didn't kill himself first. Charles might have done the same if he wasn't the one cutting the checks.
The guys in the videos eat the watermelon,
Toki chimed in and rushed to his computer, his penis still hanging out of his pants.
Sees? I puts it through to the big screens.
Before Charles could say anything, the pornography that had been confined to the small computer screen was suddenly larger than life and assaulting his fine sensibilities. The actor was on all fours, leaning down like a dog and licking the semen out of the watermelon on the ground. Oh, God. Charles cursed his curiosity and wondered if he had enough brandy to take away his memories of the whole affair.
Look at him. He's like a god.
Nathan watched the screen with reverence.
Yeah, Pickles said as he lit a cigarette. You left the cutout piece on the ground as some artistic expression thingy. A reminder of something and stuff. minimalist or something. I don't know. But now we'll be rich!
He high-fived Nathan while Murderface cried on the floor. The bassist was still Help. I'm leaving. They're gonna make Murderface eat the melons. Oh, good.
But now we'll be rich!
He high-fived Nathan while Murderface cried on the floor. The bassist was still fucking the watermelon with one hand and holding his face in the other. Squiscar had a watermelon ready for him to eat, dripping with juice and jizz. There is no points in coming in that watermelon, Murderfaces. Yous still loses. Here, I want you to eat this first. It tells me how it tastes. He held out the fruit, nearly shoving it in his face. The sullen bassist shot him a look that would have withered a lesser man, but the combination of the Swede's apathy and the snot in Murderface's mustache neutralized the effectiveness of the look.
I'm not eating your cum melon. You're cheating. You had more practice, cheater. You can't fuck a ton of girls and then expect a fair contest.
Toki rushed forward with a melon in one hand and a squash in the other.
Faces it. You lose, Moida Face. Eats it.
He threw the squash at the bassist. Murderface ducked out of the way and the mutilated vegetable exploded against the floor, sending squash chunks, juice, and cum flying everywhere. He wasn't so agile to avoid the watermelon. Murderface whined menacingly as he wiped the juice from his face. The seeds clung to his hair, and a glob of man juice hovered under his eye. He glared at Toki and took one of Nathan's melons to retaliate. He lobbed it forcefully, but the rhythm guitarist was too wily and simply stepped out of the way. Nathan, not one to have one of his melons stolen, chucked one from his used pile at Murderface. It smacked into the back of his triangle-shaped hair, knocking him forward onto his face.
Don't take my melons,
he growled before turning his warning gaze to the other members of the band. Pickles and Squiscar exchanged a look before digging into their own piles of watermelons. Before long, all of Deathclock was engaged in a brutal, naked, cum-covered food fight. Charles ducked out of the way and retreated to the safety of the hallway just as a few melons exploded against the wall beside him. Nubbler followed a few moments later, wiping juice and jizz from his plum-colored jacket. The two men exchanged silent looks, understanding seeping through their tired auras. Now Charles understood, and he wished he didn't. He wished Nubbler hadn't been sucked into the mess either. Clocketeers were expendable, but a skilled producer was hard to replace. And he'd grown to like Nubbler. He looked back to the room, but the remaining Clocketeers did not appear. Charles bowed his head and ticked them off in his head, making a mental note to send condolences to their families.
You see, when I was trying to escape, I put up with a lot from those boys, but now my eyes are scarred for life. Again!
His eyes flashed Reed, but he couldn't hold the emotion as his shoulders sagged and he turned his back.
It's just so fucked up. I can't get the image out of my head.
Charles removed his glasses and tiredly rubbed his eyes. They might have been a little melodramatic about things, but he could admit he didn't need to see Murderface covered in semen. Yes, I'm sorry you had to see that, Dick. I'm going to try and kill enough brain cells to erase my memories of this incident. You're, welcome to join me. This is Mordhouse. We've got enough alcohol.
Throw in some coke and I'm there,
Nubbler said, his whole mood changing in an instant.
And have my jacket cleaned.
Charles withdrew his cell phone from his pocket and made a quick phone call. Cocaine, alcohol, and dry cleaning. My room, 10 minutes. He ended the call and nodded at Nubbler, signaling he had everything under control once more. Together they walked towards his private room, the only room secured and guaranteed against watermelon porn or any members of Deathclock. Behind them, Nathan let out a battle cry, followed by the distinct splatter and smash of multiple watermelons hitting hard and fleshy things. Soon after, Squiscar yelled something in Swedish, and Toki piped in with some Norwegian, signaling an attack of their own. Charles moved quickly down the hall, turning corners and dragging Nubbler with him until the sounds of stupid were too faint to understand or hear properly. He began his internal fantasy that the violence happening behind him wasn't anything he had to worry about. His fantasy always involved a responsible band that required no babysitting, and maybe even a peaceful night's sleep. He looked to Nubbler, who was more upbeat, but whose eyes still bore the hollow scars of what he'd witnessed. Well, for that night at least, he could at least ensure a good sleep. Once the booze and coke was safely in his room, the locks would fall into place, and his bedroom door wouldn't open for anyone or anything. The end. Well, wasn't that fun and entertaining? That was basically exactly what I thought it was going to be. Wow.
Did you like it?
You okay? It was in character. I can sure say that. And as I suspected, I'm a little less excited about cutting into this thing now. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to everyone who recommended I read this fic. If you have a fic you would like me to do a reading of, please don't hesitate to let me know. If you're watching this video, you probably know where to find me. And until next time, stay brutal. Let's get shards.